There is a war being fought inside you, not a war of nations nor of politics, but of mirrors. Every morning you wake to a quiet battlefield. 1,000 versions of yourself stand in the smoke. Some whisper, "Be good." Some whisper, "Be free." And somewhere in between, a voice you've never met murmurs, "I am the one you pretend not to be." That voice is your shadow, the hidden half, the ancient double that has followed you from the first memory of guilt. We do not see it, because we are trained not to look. Society calls it anger, lust, envy, fear. But Jung called it something older, something sacred in its darkness, the shadow archetype. And his warning, forgotten, buried in the polite light of modern spirituality, was this: if you deny your shadow, it will live through you, disguised as fate. You can suppress it, moralize it, disguise it. But one day, it breaks through. In a mistake that ruins you, in a desire that shames you, in a silence that eats you alive. Because the shadow does not vanish when ignored. It evolves. It watches. It waits. This film is not about psychology. It is about the oldest war known to humanity. The war between the self you show the world and the self you bury beneath it. Carl Jung once said that modern man suffers not from disease of the body, but from the loss of meaning. He meant that when you cut off the darker half of your being, you sever the roots of your own soul. You become a tree without soil, beautiful for a while, then hollow. Tonight, we descend into that forgotten soil. We will not talk about the shadow. We will meet it, face to face, and through it, discover Jung's true warning, that enlightenment is not found in light, but in learning how to hold the darkness without breaking. You live in an age that worships light. Screens, signs, statistics, everything gleams. We call it progress, but look closer. The brighter the world becomes, the darker our hearts grow. People smile through filters while their souls rot in silence. We are addicted to appearing whole and terrified of being seen as broken. We hide our envy behind productivity, our fear behind humor, our loneliness behind ambition. Each mask another layer between us and ourselves. But every suppressed emotion becomes a soldier in the army of the shadow. Every denied truth becomes a ghost that walks beside you. You feel them when the room goes quiet. That sudden flood of memory you can't explain. The anger at someone who mirrors what you secretly are. The dreams that wake you sweating, ashamed, and strangely alive. These are not flaws. They are messages, signals from the underground kingdom of your unconscious. Jung wrote that the shadow is not evil. It is simply everything you refuse to acknowledge. And in denying it, you grant it power. Civilization calls it repression. He called it possession. When you repress your rage, it returns as cruelty. When you repress your desire, it returns as addiction. When you repress your fear, it returns as control. The self you bury becomes the master you serve. You can feel this truth in the smallest moments. The friend you secretly resent. The stranger who annoys you for no reason. The mistake you repeat even after you've learned. Each one is the shadow knocking, asking to be seen. But modern life gives us no language for darkness. Therapy softens it, religion moralizes it, social media ridicules it. And so we keep performing light, smiling harder, posting brighter, pretending the wound is wisdom. Yet beneath every performance, there is a tremor, a quiet awareness that something ancient stirs within. It doesn't want your perfection. It wants your truth. We are born whole. Children do not fear their own emotions. They scream, laugh, rage, and dream, without shame. But then, the world begins its quiet education. Don't cry. Be strong. Good boys don't get angry. Good girls don't speak like that. And so, piece by piece, you begin to bury yourself. Every punishment digs a grave for a natural instinct. Every praise sculpts a mask. By the time you reach adulthood, you are a museum of forbidden feelings, a curator of smiles built to hide the exhibit of your soul. Yet, what is buried is never dead. The shadow remembers. It carries the parts of you that could not survive the world's approval. There comes a point, usually around the time life begins to feel mechanical, when the shadow starts whispering again. It happens through frustration, through inexplicable sadness, through the haunting sense that you are living someone else's life. You change jobs, relationships, locations. But the same emptiness follows. You call it bad luck. You call it depression. But it is something older. It is your unlived life calling from below. Jung called this moment the confrontation with the shadow. It is not a single event. It is a slow awakening. A realization that every judgment you've thrown outward was always pointing inward. You despise the liar because you once lied. You fear the manipulator because you once controlled. You avoid the vulnerable because you were once hurt. The shadow doesn't accuse you, it mirrors you. And what most people call growth is often just learning to hate their shadow in more sophisticated ways. The shadow is not only rage and lust and envy, it is also brilliance, creativity, courage, all the traits you silence to fit in. When Jung explored dreams, he noticed something strange. The figures that terrified people the most often carried the treasure they were seeking. The monster at the door was always guarding the key. The demon in the mirror was the gatekeeper of the real self. He called this the integration of opposites, the discovery that light and darkness are not enemies, but twins separated at birth. But few reach that discovery. Because the ego, the fragile story we call I, cannot stand to be questioned. It wants to be righteous. It wants to be the hero of its own movie. And so, it creates villains everywhere else. When society forgets its shadow, it projects it onto others. We see it in politics, in religion, in culture wars, in the endless labeling of us versus them. Each side convinced it is light fighting darkness, when in truth, both are blind halves of the same divided soul. This is Jung's forgotten warning. The evil we deny within will return in the world we build without. The wars of nations are reflections of the wars of selves. The shadow begins as personal, but if left unacknowledged, it becomes collective. Look at history. The most terrifying movements did not begin with hatred. They began with moral certainty, with people who believed they were pure, who refused to see their own capacity for darkness. Jung witnessed this in his own time, when entire nations fell into possession by archetypes of shadow. He warned that the next great war would not be fought on land, but in the human soul itself. And now, you are living in that war. It does not come with bombs or flags. It comes with distraction, with outrage, with the constant performance of virtue and identity. Every algorithm a new confessional booth. Every opinion a small religion. We no longer kill the shadow. We scroll it. We feed on it. We perform its denial for applause. But deep down, the ancient battlefield still burns. Every conflict you see in the world is a reflection of the battle you have refused to face within. The more you reject your inner chaos, the more the world seems chaotic. The more you hide your anger, the more you are surrounded by people who provoke it. The more you fear desire, the more the world tempts you. Reality itself begins to conspire to show you what you have refused to see. This is not punishment, it is initiation. The shadow will use suffering as a doorway. It will use heartbreak as an invitation. It will break your illusions to set you free. but only if you are willing to stop running. There is a moment, quiet, fragile, when the war pauses, when you can feel both armies within you breathing. The part that wants to stay safe, the part that wants to be whole. Most people turn away at this point. They distract themselves. They call it moving on. But the ones who stay, the ones who listen to the silence after the storm, begin to hear something new. A voice beneath the noise. A truth older than fear. That is where Act 2 begins, the descent into the ancient code, where Jung found not despair, but revelation. When the noise fades, you begin to hear something older than words. Not a voice exactly, more like memory remembering itself. It speaks in symbols, in dreams, in images that the rational mind cannot decode. This is where Jung entered, not into religion, not into science, but into the in-between. He discovered that the human soul is written in a secret language, a language of archetypes, visions, and paradox. Every culture has whispered fragments of it. Egypt called it the Book of the Dead. India called it the Self. The Greeks called it Psyche. Jung called it the collective unconscious, a library of all that humanity has ever felt. And within that library, one code repeats. Light and shadow are not enemies. They are two eyes of the same consciousness. Close your eyes. Beneath your personal memories lies an ocean. In that ocean move great shapes: the mother, the father, the hero, the trickster, the sage, the child. They are older than personality. They are the patterns through which existence dreams itself into being. Every time you fall in love, a timeless story awakens. Every time you fear, an ancient god breathes through you. You are not merely you. You are the meeting point of eternity and flesh. Jung warned that when we forget these patterns, they do not disappear. They possess. The man who denies his inner tyrant becomes obsessed with control. The woman who denies her inner mother becomes devoured by caretaking others. The culture that denies its shadow becomes violent in its virtue. He called this archetypal possession. When the gods we refuse to acknowledge return as obsessions, addictions, ideologies. The only cure is consciousness, to see the pattern while living it. To say, "Ah, this anger is not me. It is the warrior demanding purpose. This sorrow is not my weakness. It is the wounded healer calling me to depth." When you name the god, it ceases to rule you. Every myth begins the same way: a call, a refusal, a descent. You do not choose to meet your shadow. Life chooses for you. Loss, betrayal, illness, failure. These are the thresholds. They feel like endings, but they are entrances. Jung called it the night sea journey. The soul must drown in order to remember how to breathe. It is here that his forgotten warning burns brightest. Beware of unearned enlightenment. To skip the darkness is to remain shallow. To seek light without shadow is to build heaven on a fault line. Modern spirituality preaches escape. Jung taught incarnation. He said, "The self is not found by leaving the world, but by allowing the world to reveal you." When the ego finally breaks, something gentle steps forward. Jung called it the wise old man, the anima, the inner teacher. It arrives in dreams, symbols, synchronicities, never shouting, always whispering. It says, "You have seen your shadow. Now meet your center. This is not morality. This is meaning." Meaning, Jung wrote, is the bridge between chaos and consciousness. It is what transforms pain into purpose and accident into destiny. He observed that people who found meaning in their suffering rarely broke under it. Those who did not collapsed. Meaning does not remove suffering. It redeems it. To discover meaning, You must look directly into the wound and ask not, why me? But what is this asking me to become? The self, the circle and the cross. Jung's symbol for wholeness was a circle enclosing a cross. The circle, unity. The cross, tension. Together, they formed the self, the totality that holds both heaven and hell. Every life is an alchemical process. The shadow is the prima materia, the raw darkness. Consciousness is the fire. Together they create gold. But gold is not light without darkness. It is light born through darkness. That is the secret code at the heart of every myth, every religion, every psychological truth. You do not transcend your humanity. You transfigure it. At the height of his work, Jung wrote, "The greatest danger to mankind is the inflation of consciousness." He saw what we are now living, a world intoxicated by its own knowledge, drowning in information, but starving for wisdom. He warned that as technology advances, the shadow will not disappear, it will digitize. It will wear the mask of progress, speak in the language of data, and seduce humanity into believing that we can outthink our own darkness. But no algorithm can integrate the soul, no enlightenment can replace humility. The shadow cannot be deleted, it can only be understood. His warning was simple and final. The only real evil is unconsciousness. For what we do not face within, we will recreate without. In politics, in relationships, in every act of denial. You have looked into the darkness and found that it stares back, not as an enemy, but as the rest of you. The ancient code has done its work. Now the light begins to leak through the cracks. Every revelation, however, asks for a price. To live what you have seen. Knowledge is safe, integration is dangerous. Because the moment you understand the shadow, life will test whether you truly have. The same patterns will appear, the same faces, the same temptations. But something has changed. You are no longer unconscious in them. You see the script as it unfolds, and that seeing, that awareness, is the beginning of freedom. Look into your reflection. Do not adjust it. Do not justify it. Simply witness. Notice the flicker of irritation when you are criticized. Notice the hunger for approval when you are praised. Notice the quiet ache when you feel unseen. These are not flaws. They are the living map of your inner battlefield. The shadow no longer hides in nightmares. It hides in everyday choices, in how you speak, in what you avoid, in who you blame. And yet, beneath every reaction is an opportunity to bring what was unconscious into awareness. Jung called this individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. Not perfect, not pure, whole. There will come a moment when the shadow no longer feels symbolic. It will appear as an impulse so strong you fear it, as a desire that contradicts everything you believe yourself to be. This is not regression, this is confrontation. Do not fight it, observe it. Ask, what are you trying to show me? The answer will rarely be moral, it will be human. Anger may reveal buried courage, jealousy may reveal forgotten passion. Fear may reveal the part of you that still believes in danger. When you look without judgment, the enemy becomes an ally, the demon becomes dialogue, and suddenly, the war softens. Now the silence returns. But it is not empty this time. You can feel the two halves of yourself breathing together. The light no longer banishes the dark, it illuminates it. This is the moment Jung meant by self-realization. Not becoming divine, but becoming deeply, vulnerably human. You begin to understand that everything you have resisted, the heartbreak, the mistakes, the shame, was never punishment. It was instruction. Every loss was a mirror. Every failure, a teacher. Every darkness, a doorway. The hidden war was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to unite you. You realize now, the shadow was never separate from the light. They were two movements of the same breath. You are not the mask. You are not the wound. You are the awareness that can hold both without turning away. This is the forgotten truth of Jung's warning. To become conscious is to love what you once feared, and that love is the beginning of wisdom. If you have walked this far, you have already begun the work. You have faced what most will spend a lifetime escaping. You have glimpsed the battlefield inside every human being. Carry this awareness gently. Let it shape how you see others. For everyone you meet is fighting the same hidden war. When you understand that, judgment softens into compassion, and compassion becomes light that does not blind. Wholeness is when the light embraces the dark and calls it home. This is Fragments of Truth, and you are one of us now. Seekers of what is real, keep watching, keep awakening, keep listening to the silence that speaks between every heartbeat.